right, so tonight I got another wild story for you, another wild military story. This story happened while I was in basic training back in 1999, summer of 1999, and god damn, I just gave away my age. Yeah, but in the summer of 1999, that is when I attended military basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, which is located in San Antonio, Texas. That is the military basic training for the United States Air Force. This is the story of Airman Chin. Okay. So during basic training, I don't know if you guys who are not military veterans, you probably are unfamiliar with some of the things that we have to go through in Air Force basic training. Okay. So most of basic training, honestly, is just PT and a lot of flight marching to get back and forth to appointments to finish in processing you into the military. Aside from that, you'll be standing in formation a lot and learning how to properly execute certain formation moves, such as right face, left face, about face, forward march, and all the different commands that the TIs will no doubtedly give you. So while I was in military basic training, I was assigned to the 322 training squad. Some of you military veterans out there who are also in the Air Force and also went to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio knows that a 322 trainee is a hardworking, motivated, something, dedicated, hoorah, hoo. I don't remember the slogan. But anyway, I think our slogan was pretty weak. I always wanted to be a 323 trainee, because whatever their slogan was, it ended with a wolf howl. I think their thing was called the Wolves. But I'm kind of getting beside the point. The purpose of this story is to tell you about a wild experience that took place with Airman Chin. I do believe Chin was an Airman First Class. I could be mistaken. I can't recall. This was back in the summer of 1999. So in basic training, a lot of it is designed to make you pay attention to minuscule details. So while you're in basic training, you're required, everybody has their own bunk and you have your own wall locker. Okay. Your wall locker is where you keep all of your personal belongings. So whatever you bought with you to basic training, they give you a big duffel bag. I think it's like a 80-pound duffel bag or something like that, and you stuff all your personal belongings inside of that duffel bag. That sits in one area of your wall locker. You're not to touch it. And everything else that they give you, such as your uniforms, your PT clothing, and all of your hygiene things, go in the other side of your wall locker, and it has to be set up a certain kind of way. They show you all of this, and they do inspect to make sure that it is done correctly. You will spend a substantial amount of time doing your first, I say maybe your first week and a half, getting the grip on how to do these things. Now, everybody also has a bunk, and they will show you how to make your bunk correctly. It's, again, designed to make you pay attention to small details. So everybody who's a military veteran knows about the hospital corners, okay? They want you to make your bunk so that the blanket that you use to cover yourself at night is you have hospital corners, which are basically 45-degree angles at the foot corner of your bed. And then you have to tuck the blanket tightly underneath the bottom of the mattress so that it looks nice, tight, and neat. And I can remember a TI saying it should be so tight that you can pass gas under there and I can pull this blanket apart hours later and be able to smell it. Stupid humor that these guys would use. Please remember what I'm telling you about these wall lockers and these hospital corners, because that is going to be essential when it comes to the main part of this story. So let's get to Airman First Class Chin. Or let's just say Airman Chin, because I really don't remember what his rank was. So Chin, and I'm not entirely sure, I don't remember his first name, but then again, I don't remember many people's first names from the military because we only speak about ourselves in by rank and last name. But Airman Chin was, from my perception, he was of some type of Asian descent. And I'm not sure which one, because Airman Chin was actually darker than me, so clearly he wasn't Chinese or Japanese or Korean, which are the typical Asian descents that people think of, not even Vietnamese, because all of these Asian descents, from what I've seen and encountered in my time here, these guys have all been, lighter complexions. Chin was darker than me, and Chin always told us when we inquired about his nationality that he was Jamaican, which I found interesting. Now, I do know that there are people from Jamaica who have somewhat of an Asian appearance, and I thought that was interesting in itself. But again, Chin was darker than me. All the ones that I know who come from Jamaica that have that Asian look, they're still lighter complexions, okay? But that's neither here nor there. Chin told us he was Jamaican, and we went with it. We didn't deny it. We don't know you. We're all here from different parts of the country, and we're all having this experience together. So if that's what you say you are, that's what you say you are. We're not here to argue with you. So getting back to the wall lockers and the your bunks in the hospital corners. So while it is imperative that you learn how to do these particular things, because there is an actual flight of NCOs, sergeants, called the stand team, if I remember correctly, and they will randomly show up at your dormitory to do random inspections on your bunk and on your wall locker. And if things are not right, if I can recall, they give you some type of infraction, or they can quite possibly even recycle you back a week. I can't recall the consequences, but I do know when stand team showed up at your dormitory, people were in a panic. A lot of people would be panicking. Now, me personally, my attention to detail is very astute. I am a Capricorn. I am ruled by the planet Saturn, and Saturn is all about discipline, hard work, structure, and organization. So keeping a wall locker in order is something that's natural to me. Like some people have joked that I have OCD. I always halfway laugh at it because I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm the kind of person where if you walk into my house, you don't have to touch anything, and I will still know that you've been in there by the footprints that you left in my carpet. Like, why are there footprints in this area? I don't even walk over there. I just vacuum that. Whose footprints are those? Some people say that's OCD. I don't think it is. I think it's just my astute attention to detail, probably learned from the military and a combination of my actual zodiac sign. But anyway, on this particular day in basic training, and I believe I got recycled in basic training. We were on week number 4. So I believe this was week number 3. Now, at the time I went through basic training was only, Air Force basic training was only 6 weeks back in 1999. I'm pretty sure it's changed since then, but it was 6 weeks at the time. This was week 3, okay? So in week 3, everybody who is in basic training is expected to know how to properly make your bunk, how to properly have your hospital corners, how to properly set up your wall locker, okay? Everybody understands the rules. It's week 3. You're halfway through basic training. Stand team shows up at our dormitory, okay? And like I said, people are in a panic because some people have been messing around in their wall locker. Things are not neat. So people are trying to scramble and last minute put these things together. When stand team comes into your dormitory, you have to stop everything you're doing. You stand at the head of your bed, I believe to the left side of the head of your bed, and you stand at attention while they come down the center aisle and they inspect, initially, they inspect your hospital corners on your mattress. If they don't like it, they pull that shit apart, they make you do it again. Then they come inspect your wall locker. They want to make sure that your hygiene products are set up properly, that your toothbrush is a certain number of inches away from your toothbrush holder, that your razor is a certain number of inches away from on the other side. I can't remember everything that's in there, but pretty much everything you need for your hygiene products, they want to inspect to make sure that it's properly spaced. If it is out of place, if it is not properly spaced, and sometimes they will bring a ruler with them to ensure that it is exact or close enough to, they mess that shit up and they make you do it again. And then there would be some type of infraction, if I can recall, to determine whether you should be recycled or whether you have to learn this all over again. So they get to my bed, or my bunk, so to say. Everything's cool. Now, sometimes they are assholes and they will mess your bunk up. Even if it is great, they will mess it up just to kind of screw with your head to see if they can get you to break your military bearing. They'll jump in your face. They'll talk trash to you. get your stupid crack out of here, whatever little names they use. They won't actually curse at you, but they'll use a word to, like, instead of saying ass, they'll use the word crack. Get your stinking crack out of here, or stuff like that. They'll jump in your face, they'll scream at you, and they want to see if they're going to get you to break your burn. Now, do remember, I did a video here on my channel entitled "Why Black Men Should Not Join the Military," where I talked about a lot of the games that they play, psychological things that they do to try to get you to break your military burn. Basic training was absolutely nothing for me in terms of breaking military burn. That simply was not going to happen. So all the little psychological games stand team plays never worked on me. They continued down the line. They arrive at Airman Chin's bunk and wall locker, okay? Now, Airman Chin, for the most part, this guy, he really kept to himself. He didn't say a whole lot. Every now and then he might crack a very small joke that only a few people hear, or maybe he would laugh in response to a joke that somebody else made. And again, that would be very quick. It would be very subtle, so nobody knew very much about Airman Chin, except he looked like he was of Asian descent, and he claimed to be from Jamaica, and obviously his last name was Chin. Anyway, when Stan Team gets to Airman Chin's bunk, okay, they inspect his hospital corners, okay, and they pulled the shit apart, said he's going to do them again. We don't know if they were properly made or not. Then they go to his wall locker, which is what they inspect after the bunk, and you have to stand at attention next to your wall locker. The doors of the wall locker should be opened at this time, because you have a key so that you can put your padlock on it to make sure nobody is stealing anything from you, right? So when they come in, you have to unlock your wall locker, and the door should be wide open, and you're standing at attention at the head of your bed. So after they pulled his hospital corners apart because his bunk wasn't made properly, they go to his wall locker and they begin their inspection on his hygiene products. It is during this time, while they're inspecting his hygiene products, that the sergeant who was leading the stand team and doing the inspection on his wall locker came across a pair of underwear that was far too small to fit Chin. Now, Chin was probably about 5'8", let's say maybe 5'8", 5'9", and he probably weighed closer to 200 pounds. The pair of underwear that they found in his wall locker were that of maybe like a 4 or 5 year old, right? So the sergeant is kind of thrown off by this, and he's, whose underwear are these? These can't be yours, big boy. Matter of fact, these look too small to fit anybody that is in this dormitory. Who do these underwear belong to? Now, Chin, I don't know. I don't know who those belong to. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing in my wall locker. Which, remember, if I told you guys earlier, your wall lockers are locked with a padlock to ensure nobody can go in your wall locker. It means, because your personal belongings are in there, the stuff that you brought with you to basic training, okay? And he's like, maybe it got mixed up in the laundry or something like that, and it just ended up in my wall locker. And again, the staff sergeant is kind of calling bullshit on it. He's like, got mixed up in the laundry. Well, shit, the only laundry that leaves out of this dormitory and comes back into this dormitory is your underwear, your t-shirts, your uniforms, and your gym wear. Like, I don't quite understand, right? Chin, you can see he's kind of visibly concerned about, I guess he's trying to figure out what he's going to say on the fly, because he's not prepared for this. Staff sergeant brings this to the attention of everybody else in the stand team, and they kind of write this down. They tell Chin to put his bunk back together, put his wall locker back together, but they kept the underwear. And like I said, the underwear were small little comic book hero briefs that looked like they belonged to like some 4 or 5 year old child. Needless to say, they kept the underwear, and when the inspection was over, they left. They go to the security forces squadron and to the orderly room, and they start to look into Airman Chin to try to figure out why this unusual thing of them finding, kid underwear in his wall locker is occurring, right? So they start looking into Chin. Now, The interesting thing is the very next day after they started looking into Chin, because after that, everything was just kind of business as usual. We go to PT the next morning. We march back and forth to our appointments. Everything was, as it was usual. We know that Stan team came through. They did an inspection. This is what they found, but that was the end result. That's what we thought. So on the very next day, we go to PT. We do our appointments. We do our training on element formation and proper line movement and all of those things, right? So afterwards, we're at the we're standing underneath I want to say the B wing, and we're in formation, and we're waiting to go into the chow hall, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, we were going in there for lunch on this particular meal. We were going to the chow hall. So we're standing underneath the B wing, and we're in formation. And those of you who have been in the military, you know exactly what I'm talking about at Lackland Air Force Base. You stand in your proper element in your flight, and you stand at parade rest until it's time for your flight to enter the dining facility. And when you do, you enter the dining facility element by element until your entire flight is inside. So while we're waiting to go inside of the dining facility, the TI comes to the front of the formation. He calls us at attention, and he requests for Airman Chin to fall out of formation, right? So he falls out of formation. The TI instructs him to come with him, and they go back into the dormitory. They just kind of leave us there outside in formation to go into the dining facility, but we're not going to move because we can't move until the TI instructs us to do so. He had taken Chin back inside the dormitory. While they're in the dormitory, security forces vehicle pulls up at the back of our flight. Now, mind you, we're all facing the dining facility. The security forces vehicle pulls up in the parking lot, which is behind the little patio area where we're waiting. Chin comes back out with the TI, and the security forces officers are already standing at the front of the flight. So the moment Chin comes out, the TI calls us to attention, and then he tells element 1 and 2, which are to the far left of the flight, if you're inside of the flight, to do a left step until he tells us to halt. So we left step. I want to say we end up taking something like 10 to 12 steps, and then he calls us to halt. Then he tells elements 3 and 4 to take right steps until he tells them to halt. They end up doing the same, about 10 to 12 steps, and then he calls halt. He then tells element 1 and 2 to do a right face. So we turn from facing the dining facility to now we're looking at elements 3 and 4. Then he tells element 3 and 4 at his command to do a left face. So they turn from facing the dining facility or chow hall to facing us. So now elements 1 and 2, elements 3 and 4, and there's like this aisle between us, and we're both facing each other. So elements 1 and 2 are looking at elements 3 and 4, and there's this space in between the 4 elements. That's when security forces goes to Chin, and they place handcuffs on him, right? Now, mind you, we're still at attention, so we can't break our military bearing, but you can see the look on everybody's faces because we're trying to figure out, what the fuck is going on? Why are security forces here? Why is Chin been told to fall out of the flight? Why are security forces putting handcuffs on Chin? Because we have not observed him do anything, okay? We like I said, Chin barely spoke to anybody. So they put the handcuffs on him, and they start marching him down the middle of this pathway that was created when the 2 elements were spread out. As soon as Chin's foot breaks the line where the elements, the 2 people at the end of the elements were, the TI gives a command of about face. And for those of you who don't know what an about face is, it's when you take your right foot, you put it behind your left foot, and you use the toes of your right foot and the heels of your left foot to pivot and turn completely around in 180 degrees. So you would end up facing the opposite direction that you were originally looking. Now, remember I said that Elements 1 and 2 were looking at elements 3 and 4, and elements 3 and 4 were looking at each other, and there was space in between. So when he called the about face, everybody ends up turning and looking the opposite way, while Chin is walking down the center of this aisle that was created when we spaced apart, and security forces is escorting him. So when we turned our backs, we don't see him coming down the middle of this aisle. Now, when he reaches the end of the aisle, he gets in the back, security forces puts him in the back of their squad car, and they pull off. Once that's done, the TI calls about face, or actually he called for us to make a right face. He called for, and when I say us, I mean elements 1 and 2. Then he called for elements 3 and 4 to do a left face, and then he told them to left step and us to right step until he told us to halt, so that we were essentially closing the aisle that was created when we stepped apart initially. When we were done, we were still standing at attention. Then he called at ease. Now, again, all of us are still confused because we don't have a clue what's going on. We just know that Chin was made to fall out of the flight, that security forces put handcuffs on him, and then they escorted him to the back of their squad car, and they pulled off with him in the back. Turns out, Chin was actually wanted in the state of California on child molestation. He had sexually assaulted at least one minor, and he was keeping their tidy whitey underwears, their comic book briefs, as a trophy of the sick shit that he was doing to these children. Like, Chin was a real live pedophile out here. Like, he was really like doing sick shit with minors. And it turns out even further that while security forces was looking him up, they actually, I guess they must have used some type of image search, like some type of mugshot search. Like, maybe they compared the picture that was on his military ID in the criminal database or something to see if they could come across matching information, because his social didn't bring back any information, and they found a match of, his exact face, his exact image that was taken just maybe 2 months before his military ID picture was taken. And his name wasn't even Chin. It turns out that Chin had been arrested on suspicions of child molestation or sexual assault to a minor, whatever the charge was. He had been arrested, and I guess he had pled not guilty, so they set a trial date for him. So your trial date is, I guess it's set maybe a month and a half, 2 months after the arraignment. Is that what it's called? So Chin found a way to get his social security number, I don't want to say changed, because, you can't join the military if you have felonies or if you have any type of charges pending. He found a way to get, I guess, a deceased person's social security number, and he used that information to change his entire identity. He got a driver's license in it, a birth certificate, social security. He got all the information that he needed to have his identity changed using a deceased person's social security number. And it turns out that his goal was to enlist in the military, finish basic training, go to tech school, finish that, and then be moved or be stationed overseas so that he can escape the charges that were pending against him. Because obviously he was going to be convicted. I mean, I guess he knew that there was going to be enough like DNA evidence or whatever it was to, to have him convicted. And if you guys know anything about prisons, the inmates in the prison, they despise, from my understanding, they despise anybody who has done some type of criminal act to a child, particularly when you're talking about molestation or any type of sexual assault. That is the one thing that all inmates kind of have their own moral code about. Like, they will set aside their differences. You could have the Aryan nation over here. You can have the Muslims over there. You can have different gangs or different territories that are all spread out throughout the prison. But whatever wars they may have going on internally in the facility, if somebody who has committed these type of crimes enters that facility, they will put all their differences aside until they have dealt with, you know, that particular person. And I think that's what Chin knew his fate was going to be, which is why he, you know, took the avenue that he tried to take and escape that fate. It did not work. California came to Lackland Air Force Base. They extradited him back to California. They put him in a holding cell. They made him wait there until his trial, and Chin was eventually convicted on the charges of child molestation and sexual assault to a minor. He was taken to prison, and his whereabouts or his well-being are unknown to me. But that was still, when I stop and think about it, that is still one of the most craziest experiences I've had in basic training. It's not something that you even expect to happen, you know, in basic training. Like, this sounds like some shit out of a movie or something that you would see on a streaming platform or something like that. This is what? Like, how do you get a hold of somebody's social security number and really use it to create an entire new identification for yourself? And I'm saying that because I'm ignorant to it. It may be easier than you actually think, but yeah, that right there is the story of Airman Chin, which took place in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas in the summer of 1999. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the real Rayhan, and here on this channel, I tell stories, real life stories about different experiences that I've had all throughout my life. I've got a ton of stories here on the channel already, a ton more to come. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and smash the like button on it. It really helps the channel to grow. If you're new to the channel and you're interested in hearing more stories from myself, I invite you to hit that subscribe button, and do ask that you turn on your notification bell so you can be notified immediately when more videos become available here on my channel. I want to thank you guys for joining me for this here video. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.